You were invited to come here by David Crane to
Right.
the International Law Dialogues. What do you hope to accomplish here while you're here among your colleagues for the next couple of days? What's your goal?
Well, let me say first that I'm delighted. This is the first time I've been able to accept David's invitations. All the three previous ones fell during the first week of a semester at a law school, and that's the 1 week one can't put off classes, so I'm very happy to be here. But I think there's a commonality of interests between present and past international prosecutors. We all know each other. I think, all get on very well. There's a camaraderie, and we've met in different settings, but not all together. So I'm looking forward very much to the synergy and the atmosphere during the next 2 days.
Were you destined to be into the international law business when it's in South Africa? Was this a career path?
No, that was it was completely out of the blue. I wasn't. I'd never prosecuted. I wasn't an international lawyer. I knew nothing about international humanitarian law. I've told the story quite frequently that it was only a plan hatched by Boutros Ghali and Nelson Mandela that got me to The Hague as a quite inappropriate appointee.
During the time of the democratization of South Africa, you were intimately involved. When they asked you to be involved in the Goldstone Commission, what were you doing at that time?
At that time, I was a justice on our then highest court, the Supreme Court of Appeal. It was before the Constitutional Court was set up and placed as the apex court. So I was on that court, but I had, because of opinions I'd given during the last 10 years of apartheid, really, I'd created some sort of confidence in the black population particularly. And for that reason, before the Goldstone Commission, I was asked to investigate two other very politically fraught incidents. The one was the death in police cells in Johannesburg of Nelson Mandela's daughter's partner and the father of her child, a man called Clayton Sithole. And then an even more difficult one when police opened fire on 60,000 people demonstrating against apartheid, which resulted in the death of many and the injury of hundreds. So it was those two investigations and the manner in which they were conducted that led directly to my being approached to do this, what turned out to be a 3-year massive 40 different discrete investigations.
This started you on a path, and as part of that, obviously you work your way towards, whether it's the Yugoslavia Tribunal and then combine it with the Rwandan Tribunal. Since this is part of the Jackson Center and an event, what did the Nuremberg trial mean to a young Richard Goldstone? Was that part of your study when you were growing up?
Well, it certainly was. The first important point was that I had, the week I was asked to take the appointment in The Hague, I'd been approached by President Mandela and given the very exciting news that the new cabinet wanted me as one of the first 11 justices on our brand new constitutional court, and that was any lawyer's dream. Then this question came up, the UN request that I should become prosecutor, because they were desperate to get somebody that the Security Council would agree to. 8 prior nominees had been vetoed by one or other member of the Security Council. And the issue that was raised was whether it was appropriate for a member of our new constitutional court to become a prosecutor. And of course the Jackson precedent was raised, and they said, well, if it was okay for a justice of the United States Supreme Court to become a prosecutor, an international prosecutor, why not South Africa? And that made a difference. It made a difference to my colleagues, to the then coming into being of the appointment of Arthur Chaskalson as the first Chief Justice in post-apartheid South Africa. So the Jackson precedent was important. And let me add immediately, it was important too to my successor, Louise Arbour, who was a justice on the Ontario Supreme Court. And she told me subsequently, when she was questioned about this by the government and by her colleagues, she said, "Well, I've got two precedents, Justice Jackson and Justice Goldstone." But it was. It's not. I'm not being flippant about it. It was an important precedent.
You also mentioned the Nuremberg. Was that, as you were planning the prosecution of both Yugoslavia and subsequently Rwanda, did the principles of the trial itself, were they studied? Were they part of your preparation?
Well, I looked at it, but it really wasn't very relevant. And for one reason in particular, the Nuremberg prosecutors were blessed with all the documents that the Nazis had put together. I'm sure you know the record better than I do, but I was struck at how few witnesses were called. Most of the evidence, well over, I'd say, 3/4 of the evidence was documentary. We didn't have that. So our prosecution strategy had to be a very different one. But you know, certainly I read. I was very fortunate in having dinner with Telford Taylor in New York soon after I was appointed. But to be frank, no, there wasn't a great deal of practical value that we learned from Nuremberg.
In Yugoslavia, because that really was the first tribunal since Nuremberg, what were the initial challenges of it all? I mean, you're making things out of whole cloth here.
Well, the biggest challenge was setting up a prosecutor's office in the UN system. That was a hugely difficult task. It's a huge bureaucracy. This was a completely new animal in the UN stable. They'd never had any experience with a criminal court. And a different challenge was getting adequate, competent, efficient staff. Being a UN office, we had to get wide geographic spread, and the sort of people we wanted were not unemployed at home. So we had to get people who were prepared to make the move. That became even more difficult in Rwanda. It was one thing to get people to The Hague, which is quite a pleasant city in the middle of Europe. It was another one getting them to come to Kigali in the aftermath of a terrible genocide. So that was a huge challenge. And the third one, I think, was diplomatic, getting governments to agree to cooperate with the tribunal, to allow our investigators into their countries, to interview witnesses, to eventually to make arrests. This was all a very diplomatic and really there were a lot of troubles. Another was securing and writing an agreement with the United States government for the purpose of getting intelligence information. That was a very challenging set of meetings and negotiations. So there were many start-up issues: getting a budget, deciding how the office would be set up, what the departments of the office would be, and let me say, without my deputy Graham Blewett, it wouldn't have happened.
Right.
He'd had the experience that I didn't, so I leant very heavily on him, and I was very fortunate in having a wonderful, loyal, competent, outstanding colleague and friend.
The first indictments, or one of the first indictments against Karadzic and Mladic, were based on genocide, which I think, maybe I'm wrong, but that might have been the first time that charge...
In fact, it was the second. I issued two indictments against Karadzic and Mladic. One arose out of the wars between 91 and 93, and those were crimes against humanity and war crimes. And then within a couple of months after the massacre at Srebrenica, I issued a second indictment based on genocide.
Gotcha. But wasn't that really the first time that even an indictment using the term genocide?
I think that's correct. Absolutely, it was indeed.
From there, when they merged the Rwandan tribunal with the Yugoslavian tribunal, and you kind of wore two hats, was that difficult?
It was difficult physically. There were two completely separate tribunals. I was the one common official in the beginning. Then there was a common appeals chamber. But it was difficult because I had to continue running the Yugoslavia tribunal with my office in The Hague, and in the 14 months that I was prosecutor of the Rwanda tribunal, I had 14 visits to Kigali and Arusha, each of them at least a week. So it was very difficult keeping my finger on the pulse of both tribunals.
You did that for 2 years, 3 years?
Well, I was in Yugoslavia tribunal. I took office on the 15th of August of '94 and ended at the end of September of '96. That was 2 years and 3 months. And the Rwanda tribunal began at the end of November of 1994. So I had that from really 95 and 9 months in 96.
After that, you got involved with it. Something I'm just reading here: the International Panel to Monitor the Inquiry into Nazi Activity in Argentina. Was that still a conversation in the '90s?
Right. Well, it was. You know, the then government of Argentina launched this very broad investigation into involvement in Argentina with Nazis. Mine wasn't a hands-on duty or obligation with regard to it. I was on an international panel that had to read the reports, be briefed on them, and determine publicly whether they were good faith, adequate investigations. And certainly we had no hesitation in saying that they were.
What did they learn? What was, if you had to put in a couple of sentences, what did they learn from that inquiry regarding the Argentinian?
You know, I don't think they learned a great deal that wasn't known, but the importance of these things is that they're official. Mm-hmm. They're telling people this is what we did and this is what we didn't do, and a lot of the allegations made against the Argentinians turned out to be false, and many turned out to be true. So it was important, I think, for Argentina to create the historic record.
You are the senior statesman when it comes to international criminal law. I mean, you've been the touch points from so many opportunities, and I'm sure you have a sense of reflection. Obviously, the most recent one has probably gotten you the most notoriety. Mm-hmm. How has the report kind of impacted you personally? I mean, once it came out, the Goldstone report on the Gaza incidents, mm-hmm. I happened to be in Jerusalem at the time when this all started, right, in December of 2008. So I personally was just an unintended observer, but you obviously were involved in it. What's the impact been? What's the flash?
Well, it was a huge personal impact. I obviously knew what I was getting into from the political point of view, and I knew that the findings that we made would be heavily criticized by the Israeli government and the Israeli army. But I really didn't anticipate the personal ad hominem attacks that followed, and this was obviously extremely unpleasant for me. But the worst burden for me was the effect it had on my family, because you know, it was very unpleasant for them to be caught up in this whole attack in the case of my wife, in the case of my children and grandchildren. That was a very heavy burden.
How are you doing today with that? I mean,
well, it's calmed down a great deal, and of course it is important that subsequently some of the investigations by the Israeli military have confirmed to the hilt some of the most serious findings that we made in the Gaza report, and that of course has made a difference to the attitude of many people, and certainly makes me feel a lot better.
What's next for Richard Goldstone? What's next? You know, you.
Well, I'm enjoying teaching at great American law schools, and I'm enjoying the vacation time. It's so you know, I've got nothing big on my horizon. But you know, I always quote Woody Allen. He said, he asked how you make God laugh. He said, there's only one sure way. He said, you tell him your plans. So that's been the story of my life in the last 20 years.
As you've been involved, observed the various tribunals from again, Yugoslavia, Rwanda, and they've all been ad hoc tribunals. Do you get a sense that the ad hoc, the hybrid, whatever the discussion happens to be, is there a legacy to that? As a lot of these tribunals are winding down, do you suspect that they will be used again, or?
Well, no, but you know, their legacy is the International Criminal Court. If the ad hoc tribunals in particular hadn't been successful, we wouldn't have an International Criminal Court. Mm-hmm. If they'd failed, mm-hmm. And they succeeded in some important respects. One of them we don't even think about anymore. One of the successes, certainly in my view, is that an international tribunal can have a fair trial. That wasn't a given.
Mm-hmm.
You know, there were criticisms of Nuremberg, and that was a very different affair. Nuremberg wasn't an international court; it was a multinational court,
Mm-hmm.
victorious powers. But this was something new, and they were sufficiently successful to be judged successful. Though they also advanced the law. Perhaps the most important single example is in relation to gender-related crimes, systematic mass rape, and other horrible forms of gender violence. So the law was advanced, and all this gave a huge impetus to the move towards setting up a permanent international criminal court. So I think the development of the law, it's being used. The cases from the Yugoslavia and Rwanda Tribunal are now being quoted in extenso by the International Court of Justice in the Bosnia and Serbia case. They're being used by the International Criminal Court. Sometimes they're followed, sometimes they're not followed. It's not the point. A body of law has been created. So I think they were. I think the ad hoc tribunals will join Nuremberg as being if Nuremberg was the first step, the ad hoc tribunals were the second, together with the hybrid tribunal, leading to the International Criminal Court, which I've got no doubt is here to stay.
What's the question you get asked the most?
I suppose the question I get asked the most is about Nuremberg.
Mm-hmm.
What was the importance of Nuremberg and the Nuremberg legacy? You know, that seems to probably be the number one question. There are many others coming from both sides. Is there any point, peace and justice? You know, there are many issues that happily have arisen.
What is the legacy of Nuremberg?
Well, the legacy of Nuremberg is holding individuals responsible criminally for tremendous war crimes. It was really the first time. Mm-hmm. And it's that legacy that was really put to sleep for almost half a century, mm-hmm. and has now happily come to life again. Is
this sort of gathering here today, you're going to chance to meet the two surviving Nuremberg prosecutors.
Right.
You've had a relationship with Whitney Harrison. We're going to honor him today.
Absolutely. I was very fond, in fact. I had a great affection for Whitney, and I'm delighted that Anna's here. And of course, I've known Ben Ferenc since I got involved in the Yugoslavia Tribunal.
Well, this is great. I know you're going to have a chance to meet Stan Lundeen, who is going to be our new chairman of the Jackson Center, and right. I'm just thrilled you're here. And I hope I know it's the first, but hopefully it will not be the last.
No, thank you very much. It's wonderful to be here.
Thank you.
It must be.
You're welcome to. I just did it in heels. So. Lawn is now aerated.
Be careful what you ask. So it's kind of a legislative.
Well, and I had to be.
Yeah. I don't know. I can't bend down that That's great.
I just want to go with the truck.
negotiations with various German companies after the war, after the IG Farben for Siemens IG telephone companies, trying to persuade them that they
long-term achievement, and I signed in to the communication center there, and I worked there about 4.5, 5 months of communications.
Superstars. We don't just get pictures of most of it. Right there.
Look at copies, gentlemen. Thank you very much. All right, excellent. Nicely done.
You are so good in marketing.
Well, it was